Show number 36. How about that, my brother?
36 shows, huh? It's 36 weeks.
Yep,
I
37.
had a lot of fun last week with Maddie.
Yep, 37. 37 will be in the studio. We'll be back in the studio. But before we go too long, let's say hello to our third man, Mr. Derek Harris.
Derek Harris himself, as I live and breathe.
What's up, fellas? How are you?
Man in many hats I am. I'm looking at the young FDNY hat. You're wearing your FDNY hat today. Bravo.
Oh, yeah, so are you. We're like twins.
Yeah.
You can only tell us apart if you look quick.
So, Billy, well, before I forget, our guest this week will be Andy Strasberg, the foremost expert on Roger Maris and a former executive with San Diego Padres baseball. So, Andy Strasberg will be our guest this week. So, Billy, did you see Joe Biden trying to walk on an airplane? And
I heard he tripped, yeah. I guess
he was trying to be so youthful. He was trying to run up the stairs. He tripped and he stumbled. Then he tripped and he stumbled trying to run faster. Then he tripped and he fumbled and he almost fell down. It was embarrassing. It was, what is he? He's 77, 78 years old. He doesn't have to run upstairs. I mean, he gave
that useful message, Frank.
He gave the Democrats, the Republicans, all they wanted.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I mean, why didn't they just bring Chevy Chase back and have him falling over himself? You know, like they did with Ford. I don't really care if he falls. I mean, look.
Yeah,
he's 78.
Yeah, now Derek's got it on screen. Watch him fall. Watch him fall. Whoop.
Yep.
Whoop.
Twice. Whoop. He's drunk. That man's drunk. He's drunk. I know I'm drunk when I see a drunk. That man's drunk.
Now he'll turn and salute. Like the salute makes everything fine. Yes, sir.
Oh. Yeah, well, I tell you, he's drunk. He was overserved. That's what happened. He was overserved.
The Republicans got all they wanted for that.
Yeah.
Now we're running. Oh, no, don't run it again. I couldn't stand to watch it again. But now he's labeled for the rest of his career as a president.
Well, he was labeled before he became president, right?
Yeah, but he was labeled as that. So now he's validated.
Labeled as a bumbler.
Yeah. He's labeled. Now he's going to go down in the annals with Gerald Ford.
They counted him out how many times? I mean, like, you know, this is like he's been glad-handing his way across the aisle, both aisles, for 50 years, you know?
If this was a fight and they had the 3 knockdown rule, they would have stopped it.
You're out.
You're out. That's unbelievable.
Go home. When he got home, said your mind made a date his body couldn't keep. He started jogging.
You're 77, 78 years old. Stop trying to run upstairs.
Have you come to grips with it yet? How old you are and you can't do what you used to be able to do?
Yeah, I've come to grips with it.
Have you come to grips with it? I mean, I look in the mirror, I still see the same guy I was when I was 40. I don't see it, you know?
Yeah, well, you don't see. I don't see it. Well, I don't know what mirror you're looking in, because you're not looking in the same mirror I'm looking in.
I'm young. I'm virile, Frank. You're young, virile.
I look pictures of myself half a lifetime ago, and I can't believe that that's me.
By the way,
I can't believe that's you either. 35 years ago, but you know, you're much clearer eyed.
I have a picture of myself with my son, Timmy, on my lap. He's about 4 years old, and I guess I'm about 40 in the picture. And I had a girl come into the house. She goes, "Is that you in the picture?" And I says, "What do you mean, is that me in the picture? Of course that's me. I still look like that. That's exactly how I look. What do you mean, is that me?" I mean, I can't believe that people would think that that they have trouble recognizing it. But, you know, it's you got to just realize that
you got to go with it. But, you know, I do feel it physically. You know, I mean, when I go to, I'm coaching soccer again part-time for this year only. But when I go to soccer practice, it's like, it's crazy. I can't do anything. I can't do anything I did at 50. At 50, I was a goalkeeper and I was diving around in goal and blocking shots. I can't even bend over now. I can't imagine what I'm going to be when I'm 95, and I am going to hit 95.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what you say.
I know you're putting it $1,000 a year.
No matter what you say, Billy O'Connor, I'm going to hit 95.
I'm not putting the horns on you. You hang around terrific. I mean, I just want you to give me the loan up front, and I'll pay you $1,000 at 95. I don't think that's out of the question. Yeah. You know what, though? It gets me about age. It's like you're on a gradual decline. And then you reach a certain age, and you take that step, and it just goes, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I was on a sailboat. And I jumped into the water to grab the dinghy because the dinghy got loose, and it would have cost us about $3,000 for the dinghy. So I grabbed the dinghy and I'm swimming back, and I hand a rope and I feel great. No worries, I saved the dinghy, and then I go to jump on the boat. And it's like,
yeah,
I'm like, help! And if those guys weren't there, I would have been done. I mean, because I couldn't do that anymore.
It's like those people that are 60 and they call themselves middle-aged. Yeah, you're middle-aged if you're going to live to 120. You ain't going to live to 120. You may, if you're lucky. You may be lucky if you hit 95.
We already call ourselves the Tonight Show and the Senior Tour. I've already gotten that peg, so I don't want to dwell too much on age. I want to switch the conversation to how much fun we had last week with Maddie. But what was interesting is after we
Maddie
did the podcast,
Matty Kilcullen was our guest last week.
Right.
He was a former basketball coach and now the athletic director at Mercy College. For those of you who didn't watch last week and are
what do you mean? Everybody watched
for the first time.
Everybody watched last week, Frank. There's no reason to explain it. The throngs, the multitudes were watching it. Anyway. Maddie also hung around in a bar, the second oldest bar in the Bronx, 52 years it was open. And we were talking stories from the bar, like on the podcast. But after we did the podcast and it was shown, I was getting calls from about 5 or 6 calls, no exaggeration, from old guys from the Tinker saying, how come you didn't tell this story? How come you didn't tell it? Was great. I really liked it, but how come you didn't tell the story? Like 50 years in a bar, like you're going to remember. You can't tell all the stories, But one guy says, do you remember the tire story? I said, what tire story? You don't remember the day the Tinker bought the tires? Mike bought the tires? I said, no. He said, it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This junkie comes in the door. He says, obviously a junkie, he's a homeless guy. He's wheeling in a tire. And he says, I got 4 tires for sale. Who wants them? Tinker says, let me see the size. He goes, oh, Jesus. Oh, these are perfect. He goes, that's my size. What do you want from me? He says, $300. He goes, I'll give you $200. But you got to put them in the back room. He says, no worries. So he rolls the other one in the back room. And he comes in and rolls another one in, rolls another one in, rolls another one in, puts them all in the back room. Mike gives him the money. About an hour and a half later, he goes out to his car and his car's on. The wheels are going. It's up on 4 milk crates. The guy sold him his own tires.
Oh, that's pretty funny.
And the Tinker, everybody of course starts breaking his balls, but the Tinker nonplussed, man, no problem at all. He just says, and isn't it a good goddamn thing I did buy him? He says, for $200. How in the hell would I get home?
Hey, Billy, while we fix your corners, of your mouth, Derek has got a little thing he'll roll in on a Tinker we found after the show aired last week. We found this piece on the Tinker's bar. So here it is.
When Michael Prendergast Sr. left County Waterford in Ireland for New York as a 19-year-old, he likely never imagined he'd found a bar in the Bronx. When he opened the Jolly Tinker at the age of 29, he likely never imagined it would remain open every day for the next 45 years, or that he'd pass it down to his son, or that the mayor of New York would recognize the business conducted in this watering hole between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 a.m., 7 days a week, 365 days a year, as some kind of accomplishment. But he likely did intend to create a sort of community sanctuary at which his friends and family could gather.
This is like a home away from home for some people, It's the people that make the bar.
In Bedford Park, I'm Matt King, Fox 5 News.
Hilarious.
That kid who says it's the people here that make the bar. That's Cunningham. That's Buffalo's kid.
Oh, is it?
Kill him. Yeah, Cunningham. They call him Cunningham. Cunningham and kill him. But yeah, I love when they say, between the hours of 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and 4 a.m., that barn never closed. Ever. Ever.
And nobody knew could get in after 4 a.m. All you could do was get out.
You knocked on the door and the porter would serve you. You took care of the porter, and it never closed. It was open 24/7. Mike threw the keys on the roof when he opened the joint.
Sounds like a hell of a place. A hell of a place.
I love when this guy said he met his wife. It wasn't really a romantic.
I guess romance was wherever you find it is romance.
Romance is just 4 gin and tonics away, you know?
Well, with that, we ought to bring on our guest today, Andy Strasberg. And Derek, can you get Andy, please?
Yeah, here's another Bronx guy, right? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we got Andy in.
Right.
Hey, Andy, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. That's my partner, Billy O'Connor, and you've already met Derek Harris.
Hi, guys.
How are you, Andy? Nice to meet you, pal. Pleasure.
Nice meeting you.
Well, Andy, I look at you and I look at me, and I'm thinking I used to work with your son. Yeah.
Let me ask you right up front. There's that 33-cent stamp behind it with Maris. Is that on the level? Is that out now? Is there a 33-cent stamp with Maris?
Billy, that was from 1999 that the United States Postal Service issued that, and I was at the ceremony representing the Maris family. So that's been out for over 20 years.
Really? Yeah, I never knew that.
So, Andy, you are the foremost expert on Roger Maris.
Other than the family, yes.
Other than the family. And this is the 50th year anniversary of Roger Maris's 61st home run, the epic race between Mantle, Maris, and Babe Ruth. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
It was the greatest summer of my life. I turned 13 in the middle of the summer. And so I had a lot of experiences going on. But I fell in love with Maris when he first joined the Yankees after a trade with Kansas City in December of 1959. And 1960, Maris won the MVP award. And all my friends, without exception, all were Mickey Mantle fans. And I wanted one guy just for my own. And so what I did is I selected Roger Maris. Maris won the MVP award in 1960. And so 1961, I'm all in. And as you mentioned, that was the summer that Raj and Mickey were chasing Babe Ruth's ghost for single season home runs, trying to beat 60.
Hey, Derek, I think Derek has a video that he wants to show of the 61st home run. That was against the Red Sox, correct?
Yes. Tracy Stallard.
Tracy Stallard was on the mound. Derek, can you roll it?
There it is. $5,000, somebody. He got his pitch. $5,000. And here is the fellow with 61. You're seeing a lot today.
How many people were in the stands that day, Andy?
Now, do you expect me to know that there were 23,154 fans in the stands?
And I'm going to tell you who one 13-year-old boy was in those stands, and he can prove it because we've got a picture of him in the stands when he was 13 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Billy O'Connor. That right there.
Incredible.
Yeah, that was me. I was about 4 or 5 rows behind Sal Durant.
Billy, tell me what was going on prior to the game and after the home run. Everyone has seen the home run, but was there a lot of tension? Was there a lot of chit chat? What was going on before and after?
The big thing was, like you said before, most Yankee fans wanted to see Mantle break it. Most Yankee fans were rooting for Mantle. They weren't big Maris fans. They gave him a rap like he was used to hit cheap home runs. Like there's such a thing as a cheap home run, But what Mantle, was the heir apparent to Joey D. So everybody was talking really, and myself included, was about the $5,000. I was a 13-year-old kid. $5,000 for an adult in 1961 was a lot of money. For a kid, it would have been.
So, Billy, didn't you why don't you tell me about Sal Durante's catch? Because
that was.
There was
I
some
don't think
drama.
you'll ever hear this in the newspapers, or you will never hear this on the radio. But I was there, and when Durante made the catch and caught the ball, there was a guy. Now I was just a kid, so the guy looked like a bouncer to me. He was enormous. But he was a big guy. Stood up and he hit Durante right in the jaw to try and make him lose the ball. I don't know how he hung on to the ball. I swear to God, I don't know because he looked like he was going down, but there was so much security in that section because that's where Maris usually hits his home runs that they rushed. As soon as the ball was in the air, they were rushing to that spot. But I tell you, he was going down when they grabbed him, but he hung on to the ball. But I never read that in the papers, but I was there. I saw it. It was a remarkable day. I didn't remember that it was his first at bat. I was just a kid. And then I told all my friends in school, Frank, would you believe this? I said, I come in the next day and said, I was there. I was at the game. And they said, yeah, Okada spinning tails. And I had to bring the newspaper the next day to show them, look, I was there, I swear.
Yeah. And you're right, Billy, it was his second at-bat. Because his first, you just reminded me, his first at-bat, he flew out to Carl Yastrzemski in left field, which surprised a lot of people. It shocked a lot of people because Roger pulled the ball. So you're absolutely right. It was not his first at-bat. It was his second at-bat.
So he went to the opposite field on the first at-bat. Do you take from that the game was more important than him than the record?
I think that he was over anxious. I think he went with a pitch and didn't have his good swing on it, and that's why the ball went to left field. And it's the one question. It's one of many questions that I never asked him, but that's what I felt, that he was trying to get comfortable and just was swinging, and the ball went to left field.
Andy, why don't you tell the story how you met Roger the first time?
Well, I met Roger by just going to Yankee games starting in 1962. In 1961, I only went to 3 Yankee games because my parents had the restriction that the only way I could go to a Yankee game is with an adult chaperone. So I only got to go to 3 games.
And you lived in the Bronx at that time?
No, lived in White Plains.
Okay, but you were born in the Bronx?
Born in Manhattan, grew up in the Bronx.
Gotcha.
All right, and so 1962, I'm a big 14-year-old kid. I don't need a chaperone. So the number of games that I went to in 62 jumped from 3 in 61 to 40 in 1962.
Wow.
And I would get to the ballpark, for a 2 o'clock game, I'd get there around 10 in the morning. And the purpose and the hope was to meet Roger Maris. And they would park off of 157th Street and walk in. And I was too nervous. I would see him, but I couldn't talk to him. So eventually I figured out the only way I'm going to be able to communicate with Roger Maris is if I write him a note. And so I did, and I would always sign the note, your number one fan, Andy Strasberg. And it got to the point where he would get out of his car, he would see me, and literally, he would reach over the kids that wanted his autograph to get my note, put it in his hand, put it in his pocket, and walk into the stadium. And so the first time I met Raj, we never said a word because I couldn't speak. I was frozen. But eventually he started to recognize me because I was a little bit of a persistent kid.
You? I can't believe that. You? And now, how old was Roger at that time? Maybe 26?
He was 27 when he hit his 61st home run.
Okay, so he was 28 years old. Can you imagine the poise of a 28-year-old going through all of that stuff? I recall that I don't know whether it's true or not, but had clumps of his hair falling out during the '61 race. How did that manifest itself? How do you think Roger dealt with all of that? I mean, he probably would have rather had Mickey break the record than him. And if the truth be told,
Well, I disagree with you. I think that Roger, as he was getting closer, if you had asked him in July, maybe. But when he was getting close, he wanted that record. He wanted to be the guy to break the record.
and really, Mickey dropped out of the race because he had an injury, didn't he? I think he missed. He sort of stalled at 54, and he didn't play the last week of the season or 2 weeks of the season or whatever.
He actually got
on Roger.
Mickey got he had a cold, and Mel Allen suggested that he goes to his doctor and gives him a shot. And unfortunately, the shot, which he got in the rear end, started it complicated things, and so he never got better. And so, and you bring up a great point, guys, and that is everyone, all my friends, and still to this day, I hear it a lot, that Roger got so many home runs because he was hitting in front of Mickey Mantle. And so he was being protected by Mickey Mantle because they weren't going to walk Roger to get to Mickey. Well, the three most important home runs that season was 59, 60, and 61. Mickey wasn't in the lineup. In fact, Roger played center field for a couple of those home runs. So he wasn't being protected, and the pitchers came at him, and Roger won.
Wow.
I didn't know he had played center field for a couple of those games, but he did have a rocket of an arm. I remember he had a great arm. And people didn't really give him credit for that, but he had a terrific arm. I mean, he was a good fielder.
Yeah, he was, in my opinion, he probably had, along with Rocky Colavito, one of the strongest, most accurate arms in the American League. And a lot of people have told me that they also think that Al Kaline, but I didn't get to see Kaline as much as I saw the other two guys. But the greatest moment, literally, the greatest moment for me during that 1961 season took place on June 11th. And what happened was it was a doubleheader, and it was against the Angels, and it was at Yankee Stadium. And Roger, in the first game, made two incredible game-saving catches by going back to that 40-inch high wall in right field. And the first one, it was a ball that was hit by Ken Hunt. And Roger jumped up, caught it, and fell in backwards into the stands. And then in the ninth inning, Ted Kluszewski hit a ball going into the Yankee bullpen. Roger saved that. Now, that was game one. In game two, Roger hit two home runs, numbers 19 and 20. But what really turned me on was the fact that Maris was an incredible defensive outfielder. And that was a special day. And that was the day, June 11th, that I thought, man, did I pick the right guy?
You did indeed. You did indeed.
Who was managing the Yankee team that year, Andy?
What's that?
Who was managing that team that year? Casey got fired the year before.
Yeah, it was Ralph Houck.
Ralph Houck.
Yeah. So now it's 1962. You've just handed Roger your. He's got a photo of it. Derek found a photo of Roger going into the stands. And so now it's 62. You've given Roger the letter. Now, how do you next see him?
Well, I would then, as soon as the gates were open, I would run in and go to right field and stand trying to get his attention. And eventually, one of my buddies said to me, why don't you ask Roger for a batting practice ball? Because he was out in right field shagging. And so I got up enough nerve. Now, remember, believe it or not, Frank, I was shy. I was hesitant. And in a shaky voice, I said, Raj, can I get a ball? And to my shock, he turned around and flipped me a batting practice ball. It hit me right here, rolled away, because I couldn't lift up my right hand or my left hand to catch it. I was just so taken back. And then Raj goes in to take batting practice, and I'm screaming, Raj, I didn't get the ball. He stops, he talks to Phil Linz, utility infielder.
And harmonica player.
Linz comes walking out. This is still batting practice. He comes walking out. He comes all the way to the wall. He looks at me and he says, hold out your hand. So I hold out my hand, and he puts a baseball in my hand. And I turned to my buddies and I said, look, I got a ball from Roger Maris. And they said, no, you didn't. We just saw it. You got a ball from Phil Linz.
So wasn't there a story about a cracked bat also?
Yes. Well, I asked Roger for not being shy. I asked Roger for two things. I asked him for, after I got the baseball, I asked him for one of his bats and one of his home runs. And what he said is, as far as the home run, you'll have to catch it. But the next time I crack my bat, I'll give it to you. Now, this is 1965.
Okay,
Just
65.
to give you and the Yankees are actually in California. They're playing the Angels, and I'm listening to the game. And at one point, Roger comes up, and the Yankee broadcaster mentions that he fouled the ball off behind home plate into the stands, and then added, he must have cracked his bat. He's going to the dugout for a new piece of lumber. Well, I listen and I think, but I don't want to jinx anything. The next day, my best friend, Gary Baker, calls me and he said, Andy, did you hear the Yankee game? And I said, yeah. He said, Roger cracked his bat. That's the one he promised you. Well, the Yankees come in off the road, and I get into the ballpark, and I had missed Roger walking in. And as soon as the gates went up, I went out to right field, and here comes Roger to shag some fly balls, but he doesn't. He comes straight up to me, he points to me, and he says, I got that bat that I promised you just before the game starts. Why don't you come to the dugout, and I'll give it to you. My God, I couldn't believe it. I mean, this is the greatest day of my life.
Had you talked to him or?
Oh, by 1965 on a regular basis, prior to the game.
Great.
So I run to the dugout, and as luck would have it, there was a security guard protecting the dugout. And what happened was that I started, as much as I could, with all sincerity, I said to the security guard, who was probably about 7 feet tall, 400 pounds, nothing but muscle. And I said, hi, my name is Andy Strasberg. I'm a good friend of Roger Maris's. He's got a bat for me. You got to believe me. He said he'd meet me right here. And the security guard says, hey, kid, settle down. If Maris said he's going to be here, he'll be here. Just wait right there. And about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, here comes Raj with my bat. This is, as I said, the greatest day of my life because it's the confirmation of a promise made to me by my hero. Yeah, I was pretty excited.
He's obviously a man of his word, but what really, to put things in context for our audience out there, in 1961, you have to realize for a kid, 13, 14, baseball was everything. Football was, NFL was not even on our blueprint. It was, baseball was number one. Boxing was number two. I mean, that was it. Football was, nobody cared about the NFL. Baseball, I remember getting up in the morning at 13, and I was a Giant fan. Because when the Giants were in the Polo Grounds, all my friends, I lived on, Yankee Stadium's 161st and River. I was on 200th Street, Bedford Park. So I was 29 blocks from Yankee Stadium. And all my friends were Yankee fans. All. And I was a Giant fan. So they broke my chops every day, right? And I used to get up every morning and run to the candy store and open up the back page of the newspaper to look at the box score to see how Willie Mays did. Because Willie was my guy, right? I wanted to see if he went 2 for 4, 1 for 4, 1 for 5, 2 for 5. And of course, one time he was holding up the 4 balls. He hit the 4 home runs in one game. But that's what baseball was to us. It was everything when we were kids. So I can see your exuberance, but obviously Roger was a man of character, man of his word.
And the other thing, Billy, is that when I tell people that he gave me one of his bats, you've got to understand, in 1961, 1965, players didn't give game-used equipment, even if it was a broken bat, to fans. And so that alone was a very, very special situation.
Well, Andy, I remember Rod Carew telling me that they got maybe 4 bats at a time.
That's absolutely correct.
Wow, yeah. So they rationed them out. So even to get a broken bat was a big deal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're right.
And, you know,
you remember what you paid to get in them days?
Well, I know that the box seats were $3.50. However, I was a regular in right field, and there was a cop, Larry the cop, would always tell me, "Hey, don't be spending $3.50. Get general admission, come down, and you can sit out here in right field."
Yeah, I think it was about $1.25 for the bleachers. I think in them days. I mean, I know it wasn't much, but we had a cop let us in. I got in for free that day. We knew a cop at the gate, and he let the 3 of us in. Twiggy, my buddy Richie Otters, we used to call him Twiggy because he was so skinny. He said, "Come on down, let's go see if Roger hits the 61st." And it was after Mass. I'll never forget it. Big day for me. I got to ask you a question too, because this is another 6 degrees of separation type thing. One, first of all, where did you live in the Bronx? When you were in the Bronx, where were you?
I lived exactly 4.5 miles from home plate. I lived at 2180 Bronx Park East.
Bronx Park East, okay. And when Roger went to the Cardinals, right? You had a big deal at Forbes Field, right? Why don't you tell us about that? Maris's first home run. This is
I did, and so Maris was traded after the 1966 season. He was traded for Charlie Smith. And it was my first year in college. I was going to Akron University. And I had on my wall in the dorm, over my bed, a picture of Roger Maris. And I was telling everybody, I'm good friends with Roger Maris. And I know they didn't believe me. My roommate, Rich Schuster, by the way, he had over his bed a poster of Raquel Welch from 1 billion BC. Now, what was going on in his head? Anyway, Maris gets traded, and I'm devastated. Now, it's the winter of 66. It's before the 67 season. And I start thinking to myself, oh, my God, my guy is gone. He's no longer a Yankee. He's not even in the American League anymore. And I go to college, and in the spring, it was May of 67, one of my buddies notices that the Cardinals are playing the Pirates in Forbes Field. And he says to me, "Hey, Andy, you're good friends with Roger Maris. Why don't we go to the game and you can introduce us?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." Now, Roger had never seen me outside other than at Yankee Stadium. He'd never seen me anyplace else. And so we're driving. It's about a 2.5 hour drive. I got 4 guys from college. We're going from Akron to Pittsburgh. We get to Forbes Field, and it's about a half an hour before the game. And I got my buddies behind me. And I see Roger in his Cardinal uniform, wearing the number 9, warming up in front of the dugout, having a catch. And I go, Raj? And he turns around, he sees me, and he goes, "Andy Strasberg, what the hell are you doing here in Pittsburgh?" And I just said, "Well, Raj, I got some buddies from college that wanted to meet you." They lined up as if it was a wedding reception. Wow. I introduced each guy, and it was just great. So the game's about to start. I wished him luck. Now, I'm going to go out, and since I'm a baseball fan, I've got this thing about numbers and superstition. And my favorite number is 9. Roger's number is 9. Roger plays right field, and if you score, it's 9. So I go out and I sit in right field. I sit in row 9, seat 9, and it's May 9th. Whoa! In the 6th inning, Roger gets up against Woody Fryman, a left-hander, and hits his first National League home run. I caught the ball.
Wow, what's the odds?
Wow.
And my buddies are just patting me, screaming, going crazy, and I'm frozen. I'm just looking at the ball, and I've got tears of joy just coming down my cheeks. And at the end of the inning, Roger comes out to right field. He looks up at me and he says, "I don't believe it."
Well, the odds are astronomical, but I love that you like the numbers and the numerology of it all, because number 9 playing, and it was May 9th. Well, I give you another 6 degrees of separation. You didn't expect to come on the show and realize that I was in that picture. May 9th is my birthday. I was born on May 9th.
Oh my gosh.
That's another 6 degrees of separation.
Well, I'll give you another 6 degrees of separation. Andy and I are from both from the same town, White Plains, New York. And Andy was in the park the day I gave up the longest foul home run in the history of Rec Park to Rocco Triano.
Rocco, yep.
Rocco Triano hit the longest ball in the history of the Rec Park, and I threw it. It was foul, thankfully.
Served it up there like a salami, huh?
Yeah, salami for sure, for sure.
I got to show you. I keep newspaper handy, Andy. 61 for Raj, because the 2 guys that I was with, they're still alive. We still stay in touch, and we still talk about that day. The back page, and it's interesting to me when I look at it. One of the things that was in here on the middle page of the New York Mirror at the time, Roger guarantees entry into the Hall of Fame. That was one of the things they said. Like he would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And did that happen?
No.
I don't understand that. How can, it was like that wrote his ticket, I would think, to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Well, but I don't want to put that much weight on just his 61 home runs. Would I rather?
They won the World Series in '68. So Roger was on a lot of teams that won World Series.
Well, he was on 7 pennant winners. No one won during his time that he played. No one was played on 7 pennant winners.
Yes.
And the Cardinals, they were not shy in saying that Roger was the missing piece in getting them to the World Series and then help them win the World Series in '68.
Because that again pointed out how phenomenal a defensive player was. Because I believe in the '68 series, he gunned somebody out at third base, and he was more valuable. Who was as valuable to that team for his defense than he was for his offense, because they had a lot of great players led by Bob Gibson, but he was remarkable.
I think Cepeda hit behind him too, didn't it? Wasn't Cepeda?
Yeah, I mean that was a powerful lineup. They had that lineup on the cover of Sports Illustrated, an incredible picture that they're all sitting in front of their locker in civilian clothes, and then you had Red Shandings, the manager, off to the side,
and their uniforms were hanging up behind them, with their names on them. It was a great picture for sure. So after '68, did he retire after '68, or did he play his '69 season?
No. '68 was his last year, and let me just share with you. I went to his last game, regular season game, and this was a birthday present from my family. And so I fly to St. Louis, and I'm sitting in the stands for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I see Roger's wife, Pat, and I go up and I introduce myself and I explain that I'm a big fan of Roger's, and she was wonderful. She was kind. Anyway, Sunday, Roger is done regular season, and he's running off the field. And I'm watching him run off the field, and I'm thinking to myself, because I'm 20 years old, and as he runs off the field, I'm thinking, that's my childhood. My childhood is ending right now with Roger Maris running off the field. He gets to the dugout and he waves. He waves to everybody. And I'm sitting behind I had snuck down. And I'm sitting behind the dugout, and I didn't think he saw me, and he went into the dugout. And then he popped his head out, he saw me, and he winked and went back in. And I thought to myself, is this the most perfect ending? How wonderful. And then a week later, the Sporting News did a cover story about Roger Maris retiring from baseball. And fortunately for me, Neil Russo, who was a sports writer, he did the story and he asked Roger Maris about who came to see him play his last game, regular season game, and Maris included me and was and said he's my most loyal fan. And so it's no longer me saying it; it's my idol telling everybody that I was his most loyal and faithful fan.
So, lest any of our viewers think you're a stalker, you did have a 20-year career as a Major League Baseball executive, and you worked for the Padres. Why don't you tell us a little about how you got the job? I'm sure persistence figured into that story, and your 20 years with the Padres, because you worked for one of the seminal figures in American culture, Ray Kroc.
Right, but I'm going to start off with how I got the job, and it really starts. And Frank, you guys, Billy, you don't know what you just got me into, so sit back and enjoy this. I think you'll get a kick out of it.
That's
By
what
the
you
way, Andy and I worked together in San Diego because I worked at the advertising agency that was handling the Padres at the time, the Phillips organization. So now I'm leaning back and I'm got my coffee and.
So in 1961, I send the Yankees a letter requesting the opportunity for an interview for the position of ball boy. And I figured that would be my entry level, then become a bat boy, and then eventually make it to the front office, because I knew I didn't have the talent to be a player. The Yankees sent me back a great letter saying, "Thank you for your interest. You have to be 18 years old." Well, I knew that. I knew that you had to be 18. So I sent the letter when I was 13. Then I sent a letter requesting the same opportunity for an interview. I sent it 14, 15, 16. I sent it every single year and got the same response back. But when I was 18, I got a letter that said, here is the date of your interview. Now, I am absolutely convinced that by the time I got to be 18 and they received my letter every year, they knew who I was. And so they needed to get rid of me. And so I come in, but before I go to Yankee Stadium for my interview, I go to a printer shop and I ask the printer to make for me a business card. And back then, there was no such thing as instant printing. If you wanted something print, they had to have reverse type, set it. And then if you wanted any artwork, then they actually had to mold it. And that was very expensive. And the printer said to me, this is going to cost you a lot of money. And I said, I know. So I bought 50 business cards. And I walked in to Yankee Stadium and I sat down, and Bill Ackman, he was the gentleman who was going to interview me, said, "Are you Andy Strasberg?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Follow me." And before he turned around, I handed him my Yankee ball boy card with my name on it. It had the Yankee logo and it said Yankee Stadium, Bronx, New York. And Bill Ackman looked at it and said, "What the hell is this?" And I said, "Mr. Ackman, with due respect to you, this will be a valid business card at the conclusion of this interview."
Right.
45 minutes later, I got the job. He took me down. This was the winter. He took me down to see Pete Sheehy. He gave me a Yankee cap.
Big Pete or Little Pete?
Big Pete, I think.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was just thrilled because this was the beginning of my baseball career. Bill Ackman says, sometime in early March, call us, and we need for you to come in, sign some paper, go over orientation, and then get fitted for a Yankee uniform. So March 1st, 9 a.m., I call, and I get the operator, and I said, "Hi, my name is Andy Strasberg. I was hired as the ball boy for the upcoming season. Mr. Ackman told me to call, and that's what I'm doing." She says, "Hold on, please." The next voice to get on, and I will never forget this guy's name. He gets on and he says, "Hi, this is Colonel Stallings. How can I help you?" And I was a little bit taken back, and I explained to him the purpose of the call. And Stallings said, "Ackman doesn't work here anymore, and neither do you."
Oh,
And I stared at the phone, and I go, "Now what do I do?" Well, it took me about a half an hour, but I tracked down Bill Ackman at his home, got him on the phone, and said, "You promised me. You said that I would get a job. Do you have any idea how important this is to me?" And he said, "Let me see if I got this right. Do you live at home with your parents?" And at that time, the answer was yes. And he says, "Do you pay rent?" And I'm thinking, "No, I don't pay rent." He said, "What are your financial responsibilities?" I said, "Well, I've got, I pay for the gas in my car, and then I go out and socializing." He said, "Andy, I've got two daughters. One's in college. One's about to go to college. I've got a mortgage on a home, and I'm paying for a loan for a car." And the light bulb went off, and I went, "Oh, I get it."
sorry to bother you.
I apologize. I mean, I was embarrassed. And I ended the conversation by, "I hope someday you get a job back in baseball." And he said, "I hope someday you do too."
Hey, Andy, let me interject for a second, because that story is sort of reminiscent of the story that I had when I first was out in Los Angeles. I was interviewing anybody who would talk to me. So I went to an interview with Dennis Murphy, who was one of the founders of the ABA, with Gary Danielson and with Roland Speth. And he was at that time general manager of the LA Sharks hockey team. And I was sitting him, we were having a nice conversation, and all of a sudden it was like Muhammad Ali jumped into my body. And Dennis Murphy said, "Why should I hire you?" And I said, "Mr. Murphy, because right now I'm going to work very, very cheap. The next time I'm sitting in front of you, it's going to cost you a lot of money." And he said, "Good, call this guy, Curly Morrison, and he'll take care of you." Curly Morrison was the most valuable player of the Rose Bowl at Ohio State, and he was the general manager of Southern California Sun, and I got my first job in sports in that manner. So I appreciate you allowing me that diversion. Now back to Andy's story.
And so now I graduate from college, and I decide I need to find a job in baseball. And I wrote letters to every team, and I got rejection letters back from every team. And I thought, how can I shake the competition? How can I get everybody's attention that they should hire me? And then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll call. And because now I had a letter and I had a name and a telephone number, and everyone was very, very nice, but the answer was no. And then once again, I thought, oh, wait a minute, there's got to be another way around this. And then I decided I am going to go and travel around the country and knock on everybody's door to let them know how important, how sincere I am about getting a job in baseball. So I did. I traveled the country for a couple of months and knocked on doors and had informational interviews. And everybody was real nice, but there were no jobs. Well, I did it 3 times. 3 summers. And the last summer, which came up short, I was in Los Angeles. Get ready for this, Frank. And I needed a part-time job. So I'm working the boiler room for the LA Sharks. Martin Milks.
Wow.
What was Milks' first name?
Marvin.
Marvin Milks. And I'm working for the LA Sharks.
What does the
And
boiler
then
room mean, Andy? I'm sorry. What do you mean you're working the boiler room? What does that
Phones.
mean?
He was a phone jockey, selling season tickets.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I wasn't getting paid. I was on commission. So if I sold, $100 worth of tickets over a period of a week, I'd be able to take home, $10, $15.
By the way, I always used to say to people that sales was your fastest way to pro sport, because if you could sell tickets, you could get somebody's attention, and once you had somebody's attention, you got them.
Yep.
So I told everybody, take a boiler room spot, sell tickets. If you can produce revenue for any team, you're going to be of value to that team.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I think, well, I shouldn't say this because I think the business of sports has changed.
Yes,
but I still think that the dollar speaks louder than a lot of other things when it comes to trying to get a job. If you can earn money for a team, if you can make a difference in their bottom line, you're in pretty good shape. Anyway, I'm working for the folks at the LA Sharks, and I get a call from the Padres who are interested in talking to me. And I had 3 interviews with Elton Schiller. And the reason why I mentioned Elton Schiller, he was the vice president of baseball business operations for the Padres. And in my opinion, the smartest man in baseball. And the reason is because he eventually hired me. And
by the way, he eventually hired the Phillips organization also. So 2 for 2 again, 6 degrees of separation.
What position were you applying for, Andy? You didn't tell us what position it was.
Whatever they had.
Right.
Anything.
And what it was a ticket. I
worked for food.
I worked in the ticket department. And anyway, I remember the third interview that I had, and I knew that I felt that this was going to be the one where he was going to say he was going to make me an offer. And I was prepared, very, very prepared. And so he said, Andy, how much money are we talking about in order for you to come and work for the Padres? And I figured, how many guys have said they would work for minimum wage? How many guys said that they would work for free? And so I looked at Elton Schiller and I said, Mr. Schiller, the most I could pay the Padres would be $100 a month. And he said, you're hired. And I got the job. I had no idea how much money I was making. He sent me a Christmas card and wrote in it how much money I would make. And in 1975, I started with the Padres, and my salary was $7,500.
Let me break in again, Andy, because when I interviewed with Curly Morrison for the Southern California Sun, I worked for free. I said, I will work for free for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, you can hire me or fire me. And at the end of 30 days, he hired me.
Yeah. And how many people do you think would have taken that position? Yeah. You're a smart guy, Frank.
As are you, Andy. So back to your
bottom line. It's show business, right? And sports is show business. Yep. And business is about putting the bottoms in the seats.
So back to your tale. So now you're with the Padres.
Yeah, and eventually I moved up in the organization. I should probably mention that my second year with the Padres, I was married. I got married at home plate. By the way, it was October 9th. Again, there's that 9 thing. I got married at home plate, and I started working for the Padres and just had an incredible, phenomenal career that I couldn't have imagined. Handled 2 All-Star games, 1 World Series, met some of the most wonderful, fantastic people in baseball all around. Everyone from Jerry Coleman, who I knew as a kid growing up in New York, being the Yankee second baseman and then the broadcaster, and now my desk is right next to Jerry Coleman's, and then people throughout baseball.
Was Ray Kroc the owner when you started working for him, or how did you
Yes,
get to meet
yeah,
Ray Kroc?
Ray-
And what was it like?
Yeah, Ray Kroc was the owner. He bought the team in winter of '73, and so he was the owner starting in 1974. And which I'm going to give you another quick story though. In 1975, I had been working for the Padres for a couple of weeks, and I walk out of the office, and here comes Mr. Kroc walking towards the office, and I'm thinking, this is a chance of a lifetime. Nobody else is around him. I'm going to go up to him and start a conversation. And so I said, Mr. Kroc, my name is Andy Strasberg. I just started working for the team, and I can't begin to tell you how thankful I am working for the Padres. I didn't know that Ray was hard of hearing in one of his ears at the time. And so he said, Eddie? And I said, no, my name is not Eddie. My name is Andy Strasberg. And Mr. Kroc shook my hand and said, Eddie Stratton, nice to meet you. Well, I tell that story to everybody in the office, and they get a kick out of it. Jerry Coleman, now it's the spring training, and Jerry's on the broadcast, and he is telling everybody who's listening to the radio broadcast that the Padres just hired two guys from New York who are working for the Padres, Andy Strasberg and Eddie Stratton.
That's pretty funny. He must have been quite a character to work for.
He was wonderful, and I know a lot of people have seen the movie The Founder. That was not the Ray Kroc that I knew. He was a wonderful, sensitive, very given guy who was an emotional baseball fan, and to his detriment, was an emotional baseball fan. And I had a number of wonderful experiences with him. One where he fired me because after a game, we needed to take a picture of the scoreboard, and what they would put on the scoreboard if we won was in big letters, "We won." And I needed to get that picture taken. And instead of having a photographer come when there was no ball game, I gave the photographer 2 tickets, and I said, hey, at the end of the game, if we win, just shoot the scoreboard. And if we don't win, we'll wait until everybody leaves and then shoot the scoreboard. Well, we lost. And I waited and waited and waited. Everybody was out of the ballpark. I said to the scoreboard folks, okay, you can put up the "We won" sign. They put it up. There was one guy who was still in the ballpark, and it was Ray Kroc. And we had lost terribly, and he was screaming, who did that? Who did that? And I ran over to see him, and as soon as he saw me and heard me say, I'm the one responsible, he said, you're fired.
Yeah, but he fired Eddie Stratton. Eddie Strasberg could have came back to work the next day. He said, you fired Eddie Stratton.
And I did come back the next day, and they said he'd get over it right away. And he did. He never brought it up.
I'll tell you a quick story about that 78 All-Star game. That 78 All-Star game, Rod Carew set a record for hitting 2 triples in the same game. And I was at that game, of course. And as he was sliding into third with the second triple, and as he was getting up, Pete Rose said, oh my God, you just set a record, major league record for most triples in an All-Star game. And Rod said, what the hell are you talking about, Petey? And Pete was the first one to tell him. It's pretty funny. And you also have a long relationship with the chicken.
Yes. I've known Ted Giannoulas since 1975, and would like to think that we have a very close friendship that continues to this day. In fact, and I know this may sound like a line, but next Friday we're scheduled to get together for lunch, and we're actually going for chicken wings.
Wait a second. The guy inside the chicken suit has had that job for 45 years? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, it's the same guy.
For 45 years?
Yes.
Yeah. and he's been quite successful.
No, I'm not knocking him. I'm just astonished, you know.
And nobody's ever seen his face.
Yeah.
I got another quick story, and it was 1982, and it was about 3 days before Christmas, and I had scheduled for the chicken to come to the Padres gift shop, and anybody who had spent $10 would get their picture taken with the chicken, who was dressed as Santa Claus. And the night before, I get a phone call about 11 o'clock, and it's the chicken. And he's telling me that he is snowbound. He can't get to San Diego. He's tried plane, train, bus, car. He can't get in. And this will be the first time he has ever missed an appearance. And I said to him, Ted, you trust me? He said, yeah, I trust you. I said, do you have another costume here in San Diego? He said, yeah. And I said, let me be the chicken for one time and one time only. And so that's my claim to fame. I pinch hit for the chicken.
Now, you were the chicken dressed as Santa Claus, or was it a double outfit?
Yes, that is. Does that seem unusual to you?
So if we go back in the archives and look for the chicken dressed as Santa Claus, it's you.
It's you.
Oh, yeah.
Not the real chicken.
Well, that's correct. I think I just gave you an untold story, by the way.
Yeah. Let's talk about 1983. Or was it 84? What year did you guys? 1984?
Yeah, it was 84.
84. Okay, let's talk about 1984 and Trader Jack McKeon and those Padres that won the National League Championship and went on to the World Series.
Yeah, we got into the and I got to give Kurt Bavacqua some credit, because once we got Goose Gossage and Nettles before spring training started, he said, "Oh my God, this is it. We're going to the World Series," and I couldn't believe him. But Bavacqua was right. Those guys changed everything, and we got to the playoffs. We lost the first two games against the Cubs in Chicago, and we got beat up. I mean, really beat up.
Andy, why don't you tell folks who are some of the players on that team?
The Padres, Steve Garvey was at first, Alan Wiggins second, Templeton was at short, Nettles third, Kennedy was the catcher, and in the outfield, you had a guy who was playing playing right field in his second season.
Number 19, I recall.
Right field was Tony Gwynn.
Yeah, number 19. He was the guard from San Diego State, wasn't he?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And then Kevin McReynolds and Tony won the first batting title that year. And a great pitching staff with Eric Schau, Dave Dravecki, Tim Lawler, Mark Thurman, Greg Lefferts. Yeah, it was
terrific team.
It was fun, and then we came back after it was the best 3 out of 5. We had lost the first 2 games, and they'd come back to San Diego. And the people who get the credit, it's not the players, it was the fans. When we came back from Chicago, it was pretty late at night, and there were thousands of fans. And we were 1 game away from being eliminated, and the fans just pumped up the players, and they get the credit. And San Diego swept here in the Padres swept in San Diego the Cubs and went on to the World Series and lost in 5 games to the Detroit Tigers.
Didn't Garvey hit a home run in that decisive game against the Cubs?
Well, every one of those last 3 games were decisive.
That's true.
And a lot of people think that he hit the home run that was the pennant clutcher. He didn't. He hit it the night before.
Gotcha.
So
he kept him alive. Delivered the play.
He kept him alive, and the Don Drysdale, who was doing the game, had the great line, "There will be a tomorrow."
Yeah, great. I recall that one of the the manager of that team was Dick Williams, who was eventually voted into the Hall of Fame. The general manager was Trader Jack McKeon, who later came back in 2002, 2003 to manage at the advanced age in the 70s or something, the Florida Marlins or the Miami Marlins to the World Championship. And I felt so good for Jack. He finally had his World Series ring. Jack was and is a terrific fellow. And he worked with some marvelous people. And there he is, Trader Jack. And to cap off your career, you've now been a creative consultant on the movie 61. You're a creative consultant on Billy Crystal's movie 61.
Can I tell the story about how it happened?
Absolutely.
Sure. Absolutely.
I am no longer. I left the Padres after the 1996 season, and in the year 2000, and I opened up my own marketing consulting business. In the year 2000, I come back and I listen to my phone messages, and one of them was a message, and the gentleman on the other end said, "Hi, I'm with ESPN, and I would like to know if you would be kind enough to give me a call back." And so I give the gentleman a call back, and I get him on the line, and he says to me, "Do you have any idea why I'm calling?" Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but the gentleman I was talking to was the vice president of sports for ESPN. But I said to him, "Yeah,
Ross Greenberg?"
Yeah, it was Ross Greenberg." And so I said, "Yeah, I figured it out. You're with ESPN. You want me to try it for 30 days for free? And if I like it, you want me to..." Fortunately for me, he laughed and he said, "No, we just hired Billy Crystal to direct the movie 61 about that summer, Mantle and Maris chasing Ruth, and we'd like to hire you as a consultant." And the next thing I knew, I was in the movie business.
Yeah.
How much did you pay for that position?
A lot of money.
That's pretty funny.
Well, that's marvelous, though. I mean, it gets me that your persistence is unbelievable. I mean, 3 years, you went on the road knocking on doors and said, "Hire me. I want to get hired." That's incredible.
You probably slept in your car quite a few nights.
I slept. There was one night where I slept in a hotel. Other than that, I either slept in college dorms or in my car. Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising. You know, I've said this often, but and I quote Jay Thomas, my good friend. Jay always told me, he said, "There's no room for any of us in the business. You have to make room for yourself." And
well said.
Andy's a great example of that, as much as anybody I've ever seen. And now you're just in semi-retirement, or how often are you working now? Or you're still representing players? What are you doing these days?
I represent the San Diego Chicken.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
At the height of his career, Andy, how many appearances was he making a year?
He was on the road for about 250 days out of 365.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable.
He was the most popular minor league attraction that you could book.
And successful.
And definitely successful. I mean, 250 appearances. He was raking in the cash. He was raking in the cash, we say. Very successful. Yes, sir.
So other than the chicken, I'm pretty much retired, and what I've done to keep myself busy is I do a lot of writing for myself. I wrote a play, a one-act, one-man play about my life in baseball that I didn't think I auditioned for, and they said, "Okay, you can do it." Here in San Diego a few years back, and you know what? I just realized Frank will get a kick out of this. Billy, uh, I didn't have a script. I just did it off the top of my head. And so they said, great, we'll do it. And you've got 6 months to rehearse. And I met with the floor director, and he said, so you've got a script? And I said, no, I don't have a script. He says, you got to write a script. And so I wrote a script, and then he looked it over, and then he said, all right, now you got to memorize the script. I had to memorize 52 pages, and I was the only one on stage. And one day after, we probably rehearsed for about a month, he said, okay, starting tomorrow, come in, no script. And I panicked. I couldn't do that without a script. And so I came in with cue cards. And I said, let's put the cue cards up behind the audience in the theater so I know where I'm going. And he said to me, quote, this is not television. This is live theater. And so, Charlie Oates was the director. And you know what? He got me so confident and comfortable. And so I was able to do that. And then I've written a number of baseball books, and I've got one, coincidentally, I've got one coming out at the end of April.
I almost forgot about that.
Tell us what was the name of the book, Andy. Let's not keep them in suspense.
It's called My 1961, and it has to do.
Really, what's it about?
The chicken, Frank.
My 1961, and it has to do with obviously the Yankees, Roger Maris, but also my life experiences, and it had everything to do with rock and roll, eating, Superman comics, baseball cards, girls.
Everything was relevant in 1961.
Yeah, I was 13 years old.
61 was your coming of age moment. I mean, that was it. That was the year. That was the impetus for your whole career.
Very much so. There were so many things that happened to me in 1961 that actually impacted the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, Andy, you've been a terrific guest. We've been very, very thrilled to have you. We have so much in common between me and you and Billy and you. It's incredible to have a guest that touches us all so closely. So thank you so much. You've been a terrific, terrific guest.
Thank you, Billy. Thanks, Frank. And I look forward to seeing you guys sometime soon.
Great.
Real pleasure to know you, Andy. Real pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming on. Really.
All right. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, brother.
Well, fellas, that was incredible to see you guys go back and forth with a guy you've known for such a long time.
Can you do it with a little more energy, please?
No.
Look into that muff like you want to eat it.
That's a great interview, wasn't it?
Oh my guys, that was so awesome. That was a great interview. That was amazing.
Sound like a 13-year-old, yo. That was awesome.
That was awesome, guys. That was great.
Thank you. So finally,
Thanks very much, Derek.
Oh, he was a good interview, though, wasn't he?
Hey guys, that was
a good interview.
Hey guys, that was invigorating. That was exciting to see you guys interact with a fella that you've known for such a long time. You guys have so much in common.
Billy met him today.
I met the guy before my life.
Hey guys,
that was find out that he impersonated a chicken. That was my highlight. No, he was a really fascinating guest. I got to tell you a quick Yankee story, because we started off with the Tinker and telling stories about it. Before the Tinker got the joint, he wanted the card game, right? He won the Jolly Tinker. Before that, it was called Murray's, and it was a very very notable place to eat in the Bronx. It was the only place in the Bronx that was in the Red Book. Remember the Red Book, Frank? They used to tell you make 5-star restaurant. Murray's was a 5-star restaurant. And all the big shots in the Bronx.
Sounds like it was a Murray's was a 5-star restaurant. Okay.
It really was. It was a 5-star steakhouse. I mean, the waiter had the waiter jacket, the whole deal. But my father drank in there when I was a kid, so my father hated baseball. He hated all American sports. Well, he hated everything, actually, my father. But he really hated baseball. It's a game for girls, and he hated American football. They wear all those pads and the helmets. They can't get hurt. Rugby's the only game. Hurling's the only game. But he knew I loved baseball. So one day, he was sitting in Murray's, which was his want, and he walks up the block where I was playing stickball, and he gives me the whistle, one of those loud whistles. And when he whistled, I ran, because that's the kind of guy he was. So he says, "You like baseball? You want to go to the Yankee game?" I said, "Sure. Do I want to go to the Yankee game?" Great. He goes, "Get your brother. Meet me in Murray's in 30 minutes. You're going to the Yankee game." So I figured my father's taking me to the Yankee game. No, my father wasn't getting off the stool. I go down there with my brother, and like I said, I mean, union leaders, you couldn't be out of work and drink in Murray's. I mean, because the chief of police used to drink in there, union leaders. I mean, it was the place in the Bronx. So he says, "Here's 2 tickets for the Yankee game today. You and your brother are going. You're going to sit in Dan Topping's box. Dan Topping on the Yankees."
Right, on the Yankees.
So I says, "Well, you're going to take us down to the game?" He says, "No, I'm not driving to that stupid stadium." He says, "To see that game." He says, "Just sit there and everything's taken care of." 2 cops walk in, and they say, where's the kids that are going to the game?" So me and my brother, here we are. We get in the back of the cop car, 2 cops, sirens all the way down the concourse, right? Take us to Dan Topping's box, and the 2 cops sit there. They put us in the box. And they sat there through the whole game. They stood there through the whole game while we sat and watched the game. And then he put us back in the car, sirens blaring all the way back up to the tanker and dropped us off. But that's the kind of hooks that they had in them days. I mean, and that was my experience with my old man still would go to the game. You couldn't put a gun to his head and get him to a game.
Speaking of guns to the head, Derek, do you have that
Nice segue.
that segue into our next new feature of the show will be Who's Fredo? Fredo. We'll introduce Fredo right now for anybody who doesn't know. Yes, Fredo. Yes, Fredo. There he is. Yep. That's Fredo. That's Fredo. That's Fredo. That's Fredo. So, in our category of Who's the Fredo, let's talk about the first family of Fredos. Who's the Fredo in the Kennedy family? There's, let's say, Joe Sr., there is JFK, there is Bobby Kennedy, and there is Teddy Kennedy. Who's the Fredo of that group? And who would you pick as the other 3 characters?
Well, the Fredo is definitely Teddy Kennedy. I mean, you got to go with Teddy Kennedy as the Fredo.
Well, and he got drove off a bridge and killed a woman and then denied it would obviously be the Fredo.
And Volkswagens float. So if Teddy Kennedy drove a Volkswagen, he would have been president today. It was all the car, Frank.
Okay, so of that group now, you got a president of the United States, an attorney general, and a powerful old man. Who is the godfather of that group?
Well, the old man. The old man was the kingmaker. He was the guy. I mean, he wanted his Joseph actually to be president.
He wanted Joe Jr. to be president, correct?
Yeah, but he got killed during the war.
Yeah, and who was now an interesting debate would be which of the remaining 2, JFK or Bobby, which would be Sonny and which would be Michael?
That's an interesting question. That you could debate on.
Yes.
That's debatable. From what I understand, Bobby was really manipulative. You know, I read the book he wrote when I was in Vietnam, when he was running for president, called "To Seek a Newer World." Was Bobby Kennedy's book, and I got to tell you, when I was in Nam and I was reading it, he had made a point of saying we could get out of Vietnam by letting the Japanese have a bigger impact on Southeast Asia. And I said, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. The Vietnamese hate the Japanese. I mean, the Japanese came through there in World War II and they made the Germans look like the Easter Bunny. What they did in China, what they did in Southeast Asia. But I mean, I remember reading that book, and from what I understand, he was super manipulative.
So would you? Who would you? So what?
I'd say he was the Michael, and Sonny was. I'd say JFK was the more muscle. I'd say if I had, but maybe not. Yeah, Bobby was muscle too. You know.
Yeah, Bobby was
great.
Taking on the mafia.
You know what? I was a teamster back then when Bobby got killed.
Yeah.
And you know, Hoffa and the Kennedys had quite a history. You know,
right.
Hoffa hated the Kennedys. He hated all rich people. I mean, you know, he was a self-made man. And Teamster headquarters, when Bobby Kennedy got killed, was the only building in Washington, D.C. that didn't fly the flag at half-mast.
Well, you know,
Hoffa said, put it back up.
It's interesting that you talk about the old man, because when the old man died, JFK became president, and but had JFK, I forget where I was going with this, and so JFK became the Godfather. If Sonny had lived, wouldn't Sonny have become the Godfather instead of?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I think without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know, the Godfather is one of those movies. It's like, if you're switching channels and it happens to come on, it's really hard to press the button, you know, to the next thing. And I don't care how many times you've seen it. I don't care if it's in the middle of the movie, if it's towards the end of the movie, but you almost always got to pause a little bit. Yeah. And
you got to stay for a minute or two, and a minute or two becomes 5 to 10.
Yeah, exactly.
5 to 10 becomes, you know,
it's so perfectly cast. I mean, it's just a great film. Just a great film.
Speaking of perfect cast,
it's a great book too. You know what the first line of the book is, Frank? The Godfather?
No, I'm going to find out.
First line. You open the book, and there's a quote. It says, "Behind every fortune, there's a crime." Balzac.
That's terrific. Terrific.
That's the first line.
Our next segment would be This Week in History. You know what took place this week in history in 1932?
1932. I want to say something about Prohibition.
No, it's something about our country. Very famous moment in our country's history.
1932.
Yep. A song was recorded by Kate Smith.
God Bless America, huh? Really? In 1932?
God Bless America was recorded in 1932 by Kate Smith.
Irving Berlin.
Yeah. Why don't you say
I gotta tell you, when I was at the University of Florida, I was in this terrible music class. I mean, you had to take one or the other, music or art. Now, you know I'm colorblind. I know you're colorblind. There's no sense in me taking art. I said, oh, I'll take music, right? So I'm in this music class, and it's terribly boring. I mean, Paint would watch this music class drive. The guy teaching music class couldn't make a porn film seem interesting. I mean, he was terrible. And he's playing this 15th century fugue or something, you know, and the guy says, you know, there's like 150 students, and he goes, can I have your impression of what you thought that was? So naturally, I'm going to break balls, you know. So I raise my hand, and the guy looks at me, and by the way, I got a fedora on. I'm about 20 years older than he is, and he knows I'm going to be a wise ass, but he asked me anyway, so what did you think of the performance? I said, it reminds me of warm beer, you know, or cold pizza, or dirty water. So the whole class starts laughing, and I'm sitting next to this absolute knockout. I walk into the class, there's 150 students. I said, well, I might as well sit next to the best looking girl in the class. Why not, right? I mean, I'm not going anywhere with it, but why not? So I'm sitting there next to her. So this class, she says to me, the guy said, we have to write a paper. and I want you to write a paper about music with your ethnic variations. And I said, that's easy. I said, well, I'm Irish. I write a paper about George M. Cohan. She goes, I don't know who to write about. I said, but you're Jewish. I said, why don't you write about Irving Berlin? And she says, who's Irving Berlin? I said, you really don't know who Irving Berlin is? I said, Irving Berlin is American music. You know, White Christmas, God Bless America. I mean, Irving Berlin, Alexander's Ragtime Band. I mean, he's American music. She goes, I never heard of him. About an hour and a half later, I was in an advanced speech class with 3 Jewish girls. Nobody else in the class, 3 Jewish girls and me. They're all becoming lawyers. And I said, I was just talking to a girl downstairs. Imagine if she's Jewish and she never heard of Irving Berlin. And the 3 of them looked at me and said, who's Irving Berlin? And I told my professor that, my mentor, and I said, could you believe this? I'm talking to 4 girls, obviously bright girls, and they never heard of Irving Berlin. He goes, Billy.
Who's Irving Berlin?
Yeah, he said, no. He says, Billy, you think that's bad? I had a class the other day, 150 kids. I said George Harrison, and half of the class didn't know who George Harrison.
Oh, my Lord.
I said, that's really amazing. It's frightening.
Yeah.
Something you guys can look up to for in Irving Berlin is he lived to be 101.
Well, I'm going to get there to 95. Billy's going to struggle to get to 75, but oh shucks. Hey Derek, why don't you put up that photo of Lawrence Taylor that I sent you this morning? And he is our latest guy with the book.
He's a big fan. Lawrence is pushing the book.
He's picture with the book.
I ran into Lawrence Taylor at Miccosukee Country Club in Miami, and he was playing golf in front of me, honest to God, with O.J. Simpson. And O.J. played there a lot, but I was talking with the guy next to me, and I said to him, hey, there's O.J. Simpson and Lawrence Taylor. I said, you know, I was watching O.J. play. He's got a good swing, but he slices a lot, you know, like a ball. And the guy says to me, be nice to him. He's a widower.
Okay. And I just want to mention in passing that Don Rickles' wife passed away this week. Barbara Rickles.
Sorry, Frank.
She was a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she was a great asset to Don's performance. Don never went anywhere without Barbara, and she's a great loss. Our guest next week will be Brett Dos Santos, who's now directing episodes of The Mayans on what the heck network is that? FX, and it's the follow-up show to Sons of Anarchy. Brett I've known for many years, and he'll be a terrific guest when we're back in studio. Of course, Brett won't be in studio, but Billy and I and Derek will be in studio, and we'll have a big time. Our first episode back in studio. It'll be a gas.
Too bad we can't have champagne.
I'm sorry, Derek, go ahead.
I said, too bad we can't have champagne.
Why not? Why can't we?
You can have it, but I can't drink it.
Yeah.
You don't want to see me. You don't want to see me break out. You really don't want to see me break out.
No, we don't.
I don't want to see you break out at all.
We'll all be doing a show the following week from Tibet. Yeah, I'm telling you, this is number 8. I'm telling you, we're on top of the world, Frankie. On top of the world.
With that, we'll say on top of the world. We'll say goodbye for this week. See you next week, folks.
Take it easy, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, if these lips can talk, and a mick, a mook, and a mic. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. Look at our archives. Have a couple of laughs. Thanks for tuning in.
We'll see you next week.